Hello, welcome to another exciting episode of Conspire Theory. I have with me one of my friends from the internet, Jason Bardo. Jason Bardo, he's not so much a show, but several shows, pretty much an entire channel. Go ahead and let the people know who you are.
Yes, yeah, they call me JBX, Jason Bardo X, and I got this channel. We do some weird stuff sometimes, and we do comedy, a mixture of a lot of stuff. So, we do paranormal stuff, and I think that's how we actually met, right, Chris?
Yeah, I think what happened was we initially knew each other through the comedy channels, mainly the Stuttering John type stuff, uh, which spilled over into the BYB neighborhood. And I guess that's where you and me like started following each other. And then I saw that you had some paranormal content, and I'm like, oh shit, I got to drop up on that. And then we had like, we you and me, we've done a couple shows together just talking spooky shit. And then one show you actually brought on you were talking with like someone about super soldier stuff, and I was like, oh man, I got to get on that. Let me talk to that guy. And the very next day, you and me and him, I believe the guy's name was Jimmy. We talked about super soldier stuff, and it was so cool. Listeners to the channel are gonna, they're gonna hear that because you let me put it on my channel as well, at least the audio portion of it, and I put in a link in there so that way people could go up there and watch it and stuff. But yeah, we crossed a lot of paths, you and me.
Yeah, it was great fun to do that episode, and I don't know if I think we did. I don't know, maybe about 3 episodes. That might have been Freak Pod, maybe. I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure.
we bounce back and forth every now and then.
And the guy's name, Jim, right?
Yeah, Jim. I
Yeah,
think it's Jim.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He did a lot of Super Soldier program and Mars stuff. So we talked heavily on that. Those are great episodes. I really like talking about this stuff.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot of crazy stuff that's going on,
It is.
and a lot of people have like a lot of fantastic claims and stuff with it. Some of it it's asking a lot, and
Yeah.
and some of it is like I don't know, and some of it is like, well, if something like that was happening in the shadows, it wouldn't surprise me because we got so much shady shit, because like you got MK Ultra and all this stuff, and everybody, secret spy coercion and stuff. It leads, you know, uh, it makes some of this stuff somewhat viable and palatable. But you're coming in and you've got like a couple of your own experiences that you wanted to share. So we'll just hit the ground running and let you lay down the groundwork of what it is that you'd like to talk about, what you'd like to bring to the table.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had several experiences. I kind of ever since I was young, I've had interesting experiences, interesting memories that I've had, but really consciously really getting into the knowledge and experience it, it was from like 16 to 20. And at 20 years old, I really had gone over the paranormal experience to a depth, whether whether me and my friend starting a little group and us doing pictures starting at grave sites um, and doing all this type of stuff. We went around Florida, went around a lot of land places, and I got to experience the full range of paranormal kind of. I've been touched. um, I've heard voices, and that wasn't schizophrenia. But it was with the group. Luckily, that's the thing. When you do it with a group, it keeps your sanity. But so and we took pictures and we got full body images on there, and it was just like a shock. We got everything in one stroke in the beginning of it. So yeah, I've had that. I've had a lot of experiences, and and I don't know exactly everything going on, but I know something happened. I only explained what happened. But I mean, it depends on where you want to start. I mean, if we were going to talk about some Stargate stuff, you know, maybe we could talk about the whole idea of being able to use the mind to see outside yourself, to focus intently. Even out of body experiences can be what is it called? I guess invoked using certain
Hmm.
practices. We can simplify that, or even bring a like Edgar Casey. He'd have a certain way about doing things, whatever anybody believes, but he had a certain method, and they all have methods to get them into these realms, of deep connection to something out there. And I've spent a great amount of time really trying to experience the world around me, and the things that I don't know. And that's one thing I really started focusing on, is trying to tune my mind, trying to being able to go places in my mind, and this leads into lucid dreaming, um, and all these different practices that I've actually worked throughout my life, um, trying to get to, and those I've had a myriad experiences, so, and the funny thing is that this Project Stargate actually, you know, goes through those some of those same things that they're discussing in the operation, the project, the experiences that these guys are talking about. You all out there listening can actually discover those things. You can have those experiences. Some of them. I'm not saying everyone, you know, but there's a so on that level, when it comes to Project Stargate, I can identify things I've personally experienced, and then read it inside the notes of these, like, Ingo Swan, you know, Harold, Trey, all the members of these guys are pioneers of an incredible thing, and really they're not given any kind of, but they really are pioneers. I mean, if you think
Yeah,
about it.
yeah. I've heard that there's like a set list of the Stargate program, I believe, that identifies certain people, and I think some people try to put themselves on the list when they're not, or am I thinking of something else?
That's there is people out there saying that they're part of the Montauk project, or they're part of this project, and they connect it. There's all types of varieties, but when you come to a lot of these guys, they were actually included. Like Ingo Swan, he's the one that actually coined the term remote viewing, which is one of the big selling points, because this is a military project for anyone who doesn't know. And the idea was to create an army that defeats without weaponry, and uses this new Earth kind of war, battle. It's a psychic war, um, and one of those things was to accomplish that type of technique and use it against other people. Excuse me,
Yeah, I
I
gotcha.
could grab this cup.
Yeah, it's well. Let's go ahead and well, I think we'll lean into that. But could we start with
Go anywhere you
you?
want, buddy.
You wanted to discuss about you had experienced some of the gifted and talented gate program, these youth programs, and I've heard other people say that they've had similar experiences as well. I think some Jess Rogie of the Rogie Report, she's had pretty much the same type of things that you've come along as well, that you had experienced in your youth. Do you want to, like, maybe let's start there and tell us a little bit about what that's about?
Yeah, I've had some strange experiences,
Hmm.
and in my childhood, um, I I was given the opportunity. This is just one, but given this is an example, but it happened many times throughout years and different schools. But one of the things is it started. the things that I noticed when it really started was when there was this kind of program that the schools were given. We were told that Disney was involved and that we were all given the opportunity to write something, um, and create a story, film it, and if it's good enough, we'll, I guess, get some reward. I didn't. I don't remember what reward that would be because I probably didn't even care. I was like, this was like an opportunity for me to do like a Star Trek spoof, as far as I was concerned. As soon as I heard it, so I wrote like a whole Star Trek spoof, and we made all the designs, all the sets. We cut it all out, and at the end, I was told, "Oh, we're not going to do it." So figured, I guess it's over with. And I probably didn't play well with others too. So I was a kid. I was a kid, coming from a different world. I had to fight a lot. It was very hard neighborhoods. So I was entering like this pristine kind of like you know world in culturally at that time when I was young. But during that, I thought nothing of it, right? And
Yeah.
it comes back, and like in this experience, one several times, someone would come to the school, and it was usually a lady, a woman, and I could describe her too, but she'd come to the school, and then she'd pick me up from the school, take me on like a bus, right? But it was like really like the windows were covered and stuff, almost like a
Mhm.
prison bus kind of looking thing. But I don't remember anybody else being on that bus, but I do remember me being on the bus and her being at the front talking to a driver. And I was driven to a little city in Florida, that was told to me that was run by Disney. And in the city, it was a mock city. It had all the things that a society would have, right? Jobs, leadership roles in the community, so on and so forth. And it was a whole setup, and so it was basically a test, and they would place us kids all together in this arena. They would set the rules, and they would set the game. I was a bit mischievous, and in that mischief, I did learn a lot, uh, because I ruined one of their tests, and I was disciplined. Not in any kind of physical way. It was more like they took me into a room filled with. It looks just like a '80s film board, with all old men bald, with fucking suits on, and they're all on this big ass board table. But the difference is there was one person, and the person at the end was a woman, and she was leading them all, and they're all arguing with each other about me. And what I picked up from that is that they were very concerned for what I had done, because instead of it taking advantage of the opportunity that I had at that when I kind of caused some mischief, I
Mhm.
basically ruined their system, right? By telling everybody, hey, we could do whatever we want, get set the money different, and I basically, it was a dictatorship, but I was benevolent. It was like, it's like I formed communism somehow. I didn't even, but no, it was good. Everybody was very good. It was very good. Okay, but no, but so that caused the problem, and that ruined their thing. They were very upset about that, so they were disciplining me, and they just wanted to know why I didn't take advantage of it, why I didn't, because we would get different meals, right? They would give people different meals. Like some kids would get steak meals, some kids would get like burger meals, and I was allowed like a steak meal because I was placed in like this. It's a mock city, right? I
Mm.
could go
Yeah.
deep into this. I don't know how far, but so there's a lot into this. But that was one of the experiences. That was one of the experiences. But there's a lot into it that I experienced. And whatever it is, that's what happened. I mean, if people want to say it's MK Ultra, I personally think there's certainly a lot of references to my stories that do connect, but I never remember any violence or I witnessed misusage of other people, people being treated less than others, but I did not witness any sexual abuse or any violence of any sort. So I can't attest to that part of the story, but I can attest to the experiments, to how I reacted, and what was done. You know,
All right. When I compare this to what little I've heard from Jess Rogie, she details like a similar type of thing where instead, if I can recall, she was taken into a room and it was like blank walls, and it was again, it was either Disney or Coca Cola or something, and they would flash words on the wall, and they had to catch the words or something and fill out tests,
I did that too.
and and I think that was some sort of like I believe that that was either some form of subliminal testing because
I don't know
I
what it was.
remember I remember the 80s and 90s subliminal advertising was like all the rage.
Hmm.
But then of course the studies found out that it didn't impact cells at all. It's like yeah, people could see the flash of, drink Coca-Cola, whatever it is up on the screen for like a millisecond or whatever it is, but it didn't compel anyone to buy any shit. So it's like I guess they just scrapped it, or at least that's the official story. Is
Hmm.
that they scrapped it? Now, what you're describing is more it's deeper than from what I've heard from other people, and that is interesting. Of this whole like they're somehow throwing up all this bureaucracy around kids like yourself, and trying to explain stuff like if you were an adult man at a job or something like this, and having this, yeah, that's worth having a meeting over. But you're a child, and they're sort of putting all this weight, or at least implying all this bureaucratical weight on the shoulders of a child, and I find that odd. I don't quite understand what their end game with that would be. I don't know. I don't expect that they would have let you in on it because you're the prey
Right.
that they're
Oh,
playing with.
right. I'm their guinea pig, right?
Hmm.
Um, yeah, there's some things like I was put in a room, and there was a room. It had just regular walls. There was nothing. It was just they were white. It was a white
Hmm.
room, and they would flash lights. And I can't remember all of the stuff, but I remember that they were trying to teach me how to be able to see the lights move in the room and to be able to read them like you would read, like each light would represent a paragraph of ideas, right?
Hmm.
So I could kind of be able to read something using these lights in this room, like a story being told to me. And I can't remember exactly, but that happened. And there was many little things like that we were taking into to rooms. And I've discussed with other people about this. And the thing is that you're when you have a child actor, you have to pay for that. You have to pay for all the stuff, all the schooling, so you can kind of get around it. But I don't even think it's that because it's just I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know.
like what are you performing, especially if they're not prepping you for any type of role. It's like what is the entertainment there, or who is being entertained if
Well, I'll say this.
if that was it.
I'll say this that I this is the one thing that one time right there where I totally destroyed the system and didn't abuse it for myself. In fact, instead of I let everybody, everybody got like say the food situation, right? So I changed that. So not just everybody, not just one group of kids got the steaks, that everybody would share. So at mealtime, you'd get a steak maybe, and then in the daytime or later on in that day, you'd get the burger. So I just mixed it up, little things like that. But I refused the steak for myself because I thought when I was a kid that would show everybody that I'm guided, that I'm being, good. It shows them that I'm willing to do it, and then if they're willing to do it, this is my thinking. I remember this very clearly. Um, there's a lot of fogginess around getting there. There's things that make suspect me of, I suspect could be, a lot of stuff from even drugs being put into, or brainwashing. But the reaction that I received from this board of people uh, was that they were trying to understand why I would be benevolent. Why didn't I, when I had complete power over all the money, all the products, everything, every store was mine. I had convinced everyone, and all the money was mine. Everything was mine. But they were upset that I didn't abuse it, and they were trying to figure that out, and they
Hmm.
were yelling at each other. And finally, the lady stands up and just like they all shut the fuck up. She's a powerful ass woman. I don't know who this woman was, but this woman must have been super powerful. She must have been connected or something. But I can still see her hair. I can still see her clothes. I can still see the skirt she wore, which is like a business skirt. You know what I'm saying? I can literally see it all, but I can't see her face.
Hmm.
Um, I can't see her face, but I know she's a white woman, I believe. But she stood up and she asked me, "Now, why would you why didn't you take advantage of the kids? Why didn't you take advantage of the situation?" And that's what they were trying to figure out. What was it that made me do the right thing in their eyes? You know, and so whatever they were studying, it had to do, in my opinion, with something about human nature and maybe what guides good and right was part of this larger experiment. I'm not saying it was the focus of it, but maybe part of it, because they certainly stopped everything and took me up to this room, and they were furious, yelling at each other, not directly yelling at me, yelling at each other over it furiously.
Hmm.
They were extremely upset about why I would not abuse the system
Yeah.
and not take. So,
Yeah. I mean, especially from what you describe in your background, from someone who wasn't quite as on the same level as the other kids, it's like you should have been primed. You should have, given the opportunity,
oh, I know.
taken advantage and eaten until you're full, like a starving rabid dog, I guess. They
Hmm.
expected you to be that. Like, yeah, hmm.
Yeah, that's very true. And they're not dumb people. These are not idiots. They don't just pick kids. They probably do studies and check families and check history, psychological things.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I can
yeah,
definitely
man.
see that happening.
But that was one experience, and a lot of people from MK Ultra groups often go, "Hey, hold on a second, your story." Sounds a lot like my story, or and I started really seeing that other people had this, because I just kind of dropped it out of my mind, even though this is something that went on in different ways. Wasn't just this program. I was taken to tunnels, and I used to tell people when I was a kid, there's tunnels under Disney, and I was taken under them, but they didn't fucking nobody cared, and nobody believed it anyway. um, and if they did, they never really cared enough to do anything about it or say anything. But eventually, now that's out. A lot of the
Mhm.
stuff that when I was young and I was telling, and even when I got a little older, I said, "Hey, a lot of that stuff's out. The tunnels are out. Now, there's some tunnels that I went to that I see that are not released. They've got a tunnel under there that is so big that the sound of anything, it hurt your ears. Like if you went into that hall and you went, ugh, the sound would start reverberating. And when I was, I guess, so small, it really hurt. The sound, the thing was so big, it was almost like a magnifier for voices, and I was taken down that by a gentleman in a suit, very very tall guy, very, and I was taken to a room where in this tunnel, and there was like a group of people. This sounds so crazy, but they're all
Hmm.
dressed up in like satanic robes, dog. This is not even no bullshit. Red and black robes, okay? And they're all lined up against this room, and I went down this hallway, and then there's a velvet rope right there, and there's all these kids lined up. We were all dressed the same, by the way. These blue kind of weird school uniforms. But anyway, and they lined us all up in front of this door, and in front of that door is this red velvet rope. You know, very beautiful. There's something about that rope and the gold that I remember so clearly. Uh, but they open it up, and we were told to touch any object in that room. When we walked through the velvet rope, we entered a room, and in this room was told us to be Disney's like personal room, and we were
Hmm.
told to touch any object we want. And so I did. You know, I went to this window. It's not a real window, but I guess he had his animator or himself, I don't know, drew a fake window, but it had a real wooden edge that they put, I guess, to make it more real. And I touched that. Then I went to the desk, this incredible desk. This must have been made by like the royal guard or something. I don't know. It's so maybe I'm real. This is a real small kid, so maybe I'm just like blown away. But the intricate nature of this desk is so amazing. Um, God knows how much it was, but I went, sat in a chair, and I touched the desk, and I grabbed his pen. I believe is what they said, and then they said okay, and they took me out of the room, and then the next kid would go in. But what I 100% know, that they believed that the objects in that room, that there was, this is what, and this is crazy, but this is what it is. Those objects in those room, I think before his death, he must have told them which objects he would touch if there was afterlife. And so these people were looking for him to be resurrected, you know, what's it called? Or not
Reincarnated.
resurrected, reincarnated, right?
Yeah.
So that's the only occultic thing that I experienced, and that was only one time with that group of people, and never again. So obviously, I wasn't the reincarnated Disney, so I guess I didn't pick the right stuff. But
Yeah.
um, who knows? But that right there is another experience I had, and it just sounds it doesn't sound good at all. I mean, robes, they're all lined up in these red and black robes, mostly red, black lines. You
Yeah.
know,
I mean, in Buddhism, I think they have a thing where you can be tested for reincarnation by placing of certain objects, and if you're drawn to a specific object, then that shows that you have the same uh,
oh
that
shit,
the
yeah,
previous life is still channeling through that person, you know, and because it's familiarity, they're looking for implied familiarity. So I guess it sounds similar to like that sort of Buddhist reincarnation mindset that they were sort of aping.
that's interesting. That's really interesting. I didn't even think about that. I didn't think about that. Wow. Yeah,
Hmm.
that was some crazy stuff. God knows what it was. I All I can tell you is my experiences, but can I
Yeah.
tell you the project leader? No, you mean this is a kid? They're not going to tell me,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
And
It's like all that deep stuff. You know, you're just you're just it sounds like you're just a cog in a wheel, and
Yeah,
they were just trying out different cogs to see if they could get whatever machine going, and you just didn't fit, so
yeah,
on to the next one.
right. And then they just threw me in another program, um, which was like it was like a it was in like it was in the tunnels. Under the tunnels, they have like these rooms for training actors and all these other stuff, and that's where the white room, where I went into the white room and did some of those experiments. So
Yeah.
I started some of that stuff that happened after that experience
Hmm.
with that group, and I have a feeling that that group can be found. I have a feeling like they exist somewhere. There's something, but I don't think I have enough to really track them down. All I know is their robes and their little belief. So I don't have much to track them down. But maybe with that, even. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot going on. I don't know what to make of it.
Yeah.
I wish I could relate, but I can't. I don't have nothing like that ever happened. I mean, it's something where like some kids are just you hear stories about kids that are picked up out of school and then they're messed with somehow. Something is happening with some like nefarious type of either government program or other such happening where it's like let's see if we can do these things and make something happen. But with this sort of case, it's like I don't know where to place it because it's weird. It definitely sounds weird. you know, I
Yeah.
I I I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. Imagine having that experience and being young, and
Yeah,
you're like, okay, this happened. Is it really that crazy? Not really. If you really think
yeah,
about it. I mean, experimenting on children. I mean,
yeah.
that's what these guys do. That's what these
It
people
it
do.
it clearly sounds like some covert clandestine type of thing.
I do
And
feel that the government
yeah.
was mixed up in it. They kept on saying Disney, but there was military armed guards in the front of the one of the facilities I remember, and they were fully fully prepared for like war, like some serious war. God
Well,
knows what they were there for, because there's just a bunch of
uh,
kids.
well, I mean, and when any big enough company can have its private security look like its
Mm,
own personal military
true, true.
in a way,
Yeah.
it's. I mean, look at in the video games with Resident Evil. That's
Mm,
practically its own military and type of thing. And I can be sure that Disney or whatever governing entity that either was subcontracted to Disney would have dealt with that sort of implementation.
yeah,
Yeah.
that could be true, because I can't tell you what agency, or I didn't see any police name on them. Just that they were jacked up with big guns.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially when you're a kid, it's like I'm sure that's doubly intimidating because you don't know what you're looking at. It's you're conditioned to know that like the big scary soldier, the policeman, and all that stuff. And I I it's
Yeah.
an interesting story. I wish I had some answers for you or some cross reference to it, but I really have very little to really bounce back at you with it. It's really an interesting and unique thing that and I guess it's funny that you remember it or you were allowed to remember it. I mean, who knows how much was probably either you didn't figure that was important that your child brain probably phased out or because at that time you're not in the mindset of, oh, this is important, I have to remember it.
No.
You're just like, I'm just a kid, let me do my thing, type of thing. It's you're on a different wavelength.
Oh yeah. I was not. No. I was. I was. primed to be like, these are adults. They know what they're doing. All I got to do is just play. I'm here, doop de doop. Kind of. That's what my mind is as a child. I think was geared towards really.
Yeah, definitely.
I wasn't thinking, oh, this is some kind of project against me. So that's another thing is that my my family doesn't really like necessarily remember all or even given any access to these companies to me. So that's something I've discussed with them, and so that's another thing is that whatever they're doing is not authorized by the parents. So I kind of feel like I'm not the only one. Even though they would tell me stuff, they I think they were gassing us up or something. They would tell they 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 told me I had a fixed life. I could be a musician, or I could be a political in the political arena, even like run for like office and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah,
So that's
yeah.
what they wanted from me in
Yeah, they're
acting.
front loading and gaslighting you.
Hmm.
Especially when you're a little kid. Into I guess they needed that so that you could perform whatever it is, and I guess you didn't perform as they anticipated. So there
Yeah,
was
because
like,
those
well,
weren't my triggers.
yeah,
Those
yeah,
aren't the things that I'm a very. There's something about me. It's just like this is my nature, and it's always been my nature. So I just not like that. And so those weren't things that would, as a kid, would have convinced me to go out. So,
yeah,
it it was sillier stuff than that.
yeah.
So, but everybody, some people would be like, you know, like, oh, well, nothing of violence happened. Yeah, but just think about this. A kid is taken out of school without their parental guidance or parental approval. All right, in the fashion they did it, and I just want to really quickly attest to this that when she would pick me up, and a lot of times I only remember her picking me up, she would walk into the room, and as soon as I saw her dress, it was like everything would slow down, and she would just look at him, he would look at her, and she would walk towards me, grab my hand, and walk me out of class without any problems or
Hmm.
saying a damn word that I remember. And then she would just walk me from the class while class is in session, everybody's in class, to where we get off on the buses, and there would just be one bus out there, this gray bus where the windows are covered up like like a prison bus. But so and also when I being on the bus, I remember things, but it would flash in and out. So it makes me feel like either drugs, and I would feel when I remember some of the memories, like when
Hmm.
I got off the bus, finally got there. I don't remember going there. I just remember getting on moments, like little moments that I don't know if are during or whatever, but they're not. And then when I got there, I just felt this heavy sense. I remember feeling this heavy sense of like now knowing what drugs feel like, drugs, like a sedative of some sort or
Hmm.
something. So I would feel that feeling, and then it would kind of come off me as we walked into the facility. So I wonder if hypnotism or even drugs were applied in this situation. I don't know.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. That sounds odd. It's in
Hmm.
a lot of these encounters and stuff. It's always a bus ride, and
Really?
and even when people like they have like these implied memories of being taken to alien facility centers and being made to train to do whatever, it's always a bus ride,
That's
back and
interesting.
forth. And whenever like anything that any type of it's in, the implied government forces or whatever, they've always got a bus ready for you, so that is interesting.
Their bus is waiting, people.
Yeah.
Keep on playing. They've got a bus for you.
Hmm.
Yeah, I guess it's the preferred way of doing these things. The
Yeah.
bus company must be very wealthy. That's getting
Uh,
all these buses.
yeah, I guess so though. So I don't know what to do with that. I really don't. It's
Me
a
either. Me either.
fascinating account. Yeah, I know.
Because because I'm not asserting like, oh, they did this to me, or they, it's nothing like of like incredible, but it's just weird, and you don't know what
Yeah,
to do with it.
yeah. It's like a weird thing that, and so many people have like these out of reality type of things where it's just a weird thing that happens, and it has such a profound effect on you that it feels otherworldly. Like I remember hearing one where like a guy was riding his bicycle and he saw this guy on a bench look up at him, and then he passed him, and then at the very next intersection he saw the exact same person, at sitting at another bench, and just look up at him in the same way. And it's like he had some sort of time loop, but it wasn't a time loop. It was just he was just pedaling on the same road type of thing. And it's that sort of weird, out of reality type of thing. And I don't know.
Right.
It's when we talk about
I
like how these aliens and stuff are doing things, and there's this sort of I guess now that we're like entertaining the concept of interdimensional stuff, I mean, these if that was the case, then these aliens and stuff or whatever, they can pick us up out of anywhere or any time, and we'll have no concept of it. We'll just have like, oh, this is a strange little thing that happened once. And when we look back at it years from now, it's like, wait, what the hell happened? I mean, yeah, it very well could have been, you know, government clandestine type of, or even private clandestine, which would probably even be even more dangerous. Private company doing whatever it wanted, or it could have been, just as well have been aliens or fey folk coming in there and warping the reality and sucking out whatever brain juice that they needed out of you. And I don't know. I guess that day you just weren't the right flavor for them or something. But there was a clear Disney connection, so I don't think it was aliens or Tinkerbell.
I can't. I definitely don't remember aliens or
Yeah,
Tinkerbell, but
yeah,
um, yeah, no, I don't remember that.
yeah. So
But
definitely not that. So I'm pretty sure
I
it
don't
was.
believe. I don't believe. I
It
hope not.
it's very terrestrial type of thing. It's just big business has got a big business, type of thing, and
Yeah.
and they probably
God.
wanted something, but I don't know. It's not something on the books officially.
Well, you could say from that one experience with the robed people, which is what I call them, the robed people. So
Hmm.
simple, but that's what else name do I got? Um, there's something there. They believe in some kind of religion of some sort. I suspect because if they believe the reincarnation thing, if they're doing these tests, you know,
Hmm.
they probably
Yeah.
live on property too. There's probably some facility on property. I don't know. Every once in a while, I get it in my crawl to try to go at find these because I feel like they're there somewhere.
Yeah. Well, they
I don't know.
certainly have the resources to get away with a lot. You
My
know,
God, yeah.
they certainly do. Yeah. So I guess we'll. I mean, if there's anything else there that you want to dwell on, I guess we could we'll probably delve into some Stargate stuff because I know you
All
like
right.
to talk Stargates, and then we'll wrap up on that because with this, yeah, that was definitely a compelling event, and
Yeah.
yeah, I'm, hopefully the listeners can come up with something if when they get a chance to chew on it, and maybe we'll revisit it sometime in the future.
Yeah, you guys are the real truth seekers
Yeah.
because you go out there and you find these things and you bring them back to us and we learn more about our experiences.
Mm.
So I mean, and a lot of people, me talking about this has brought people to me and helped me understand some of my
Yeah.
experiences.
Yeah, well, that's good then. So then, when in regards to the Stargates, what is your interest in it? What what is it about it that you find so compelling?
Well, Stargate is a program by the government that was created by, created by a number of people,
Mhm.
but and I'm sure I could get a list, but um, I don't know. I don't want to get anything. Uh, so
Yeah,
yeah,
don't worry about it.
it starts in 1977. This I know, and it's this project of creating a new kind of new Earth army that was a psychic army, and they had many projects from testing abilities like remote viewing, and these are psychic abilities, clairvoyance, all these type of things. So it's basically like a psychic army. Um, and what compelled me to it was my own research for myself and my own growth as you know as I learned more about remote viewing, the more interested I was in achieving those experiences. So I would set about learning how they did it. And that's kind of how I ran into them, because I'm looking for practices and I run into that information while looking, so that's kind of how I came to know about this. That was years ago. So, and I started trying to use and utilize their practices. I studied other people's practices. Um, so that's kind of, you can get that PDF online if you want. Probably still, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of information online. A lot of it, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it, but it is pretty interesting on what's out there that we can find, and because I know that there's like detailed documents on the autopsy of a gray, and I don't know
It could be.
that's
You know
the
what?
real
We don't want
deal.
to be
You
too
don't
crazy.
know.
Yeah, you
You
don't
don't
know.
know.
It's a weird world, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you can't be like, oh no, that's crazy, man. You can't do that no more. You really can't. Trump's president. The aliens are here. You cannot. There is nothing. There is nothing to. There's anything can happen, But at the same time, you hear it and you still want to giggle. Maybe it's because I don't know. You and me probably share some age, and we went the whole programming of anything alien is ridiculous and laughable. So it just makes you giggle to hear somebody say, "Oh, I've got the autopsy of a gray." Just the idea of it sounds ridiculous. So it's kind of hard to believe.
From
Mm.
from a standpoint, I find anything out there fascinating, and I'll take a look at it.
Yeah.
Because deep down I am entertained by it. Because I feel that everything is relevant in an archival sense, that it is important as far as shaping our culture, as far as how we engage with even the grays and stuff like that. We put so much into it emotionally and stuff like that. So it's fun to look at, if it's not, whether it can be proven or not, because so much of this stuff is like the follow up, unfortunately, isn't there, or it's only a fraction of it, and to
There's
get
always
in the
something.
rest of it,
Yeah.
it's behind closed doors or something like that, or violates someone's NDA, or there's always a paywall or even a firewall behind it, and that's where
Right.
I stop.
Right. And there's no paywall on I never even. I don't even want. If someone can figure out what it is, that would be $1 million to me. That would be worth a lot. If someone could just tell me what it was, that would be worth everything. So nah, but
Yeah.
and I'm
The
not planning
whole
to write a book
yeah.
about it either.
Yeah, the whole psychic soldier research stuff, that is interesting. There's so many different angles about it. The remote viewing, I know that it's something that was put into it. Like a lot of people say that it was a sort of like a psychic arms race between ourselves and the Russians at the time.
Mhm.
And it's like, I do think that a lot of Cloak and Dagger S type of Space Brother stuff was, implemented under the guise of the weapons and research and development in competition with other forces, that it would be hidden under the guise of UFOs and stuff, where like
UFO cults.
all these secret spy planes and programs, if you see them or get wind of them, then you just say it's a UFO, and then we laugh about the UFO and stuff, and
Mhm.
that it keeps the public from investing more attention into it, so that way it can continue unabated. So that way, all this stuff can be developed. I mean, because that was pretty much the story with the SR-71, was that people would see it and they'd say, "No, that's just a UFO. It's and you're crazy because you saw a UFO, so stop talking about it and we'll ridicule you." Meanwhile, the SR-71 was, developed and used and all this stuff, and it was one of the most, premier spy planes out there, and even today, a lot of its mechanisms and stuff is still, classified and stuff of that nature. And but that's pretty much, it was in its time, the a spook in its way, the a sort of cloak and dagger as type of thing. So I do feel that there is some precedence in all these stories with all this kind of stuff. So yeah, I kind of get where that's coming from.
Absolutely. Distraction is works. It works. Distraction works.
Yeah.
Um, and often they do distract. Like take a lot of these things we think are UFOs, uh, and there's videos of them, and they're not. They're just super black listed or
Yeah,
black
yeah,
whatever projects.
yeah. Weird shit.
Yeah, Elon Musk said as much uh, not too long ago. I agree with him. I think we have to have an extremely balanced view. We have to be knowledgeable and understanding of where we're at with technology, where we're at with AI. Literally, if they wanted to, with the technology they have, they can make you think anything is happening anywhere at any time.
Hmm.
You know, so I feel like we can't put it past the governments of the world or even private industry to have these clandestine kind of projects,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
to do these type of things.
Yeah.
We got to be wary. We got to be wary about what evidence we assume. You
Yeah.
know, but I find it there's a connection between the Stargate program and aliens. I think I forgot which one it was, but one of the big experiments they did, they would do all these different type of experiments. What is it, Uri Geller? Remember Uri Geller? All these guys, right? They would do all these experiments testing out psychic abilities, and you could say, what is the scientific, where did they get the scientific thing to measure psychic ability, right? So just consider that as well. So that's what I'm saying. You're right about that. We have to be but the connection with aliens and this is that one of the big experiments, the man is in this deep, like, rest area, kind of, he seems resting, right? And so he set himself up, he's in his chair, and he's going through his mind into the universe. He's watching as he floats through the universe. He's starting to sense beings. He's starting to go towards those beings. Now he's starting to get images of what he's experiencing in this world. And then he starts getting communications, which aren't necessarily audible, downloads, if you will. And I'm just trying to bring people through the experience from the practitioner, because I've experienced going through those processes and have achieved certain connections. And in one of these, he does connect to this whole history of Mars, and so he puts it down that Mars used to be inhabited by. This is one of the psychic soldiers, right?
Hmm.
On the Stargate project, he's a founding member. I mean, one of the founding members. Um, I can't remember his name right now, but um, he says that Mars was once, you know, had people, had not humans maybe, but aliens, and they lived there, and the whole story of the destruction of Mars, that whole thing, he actually wrote down in that experiment, and he believed he was connected to, and they all say this, they're connected to an uh to something outside of our Earth, of some power outside of our Earth. They're connected to it. So some off-world power, they say, is talking to them and connected to them.
Hmm.
So that is an alien connection. And
Yeah.
if there is aliens, and I believe there is, um, I think they would have the ability to do what our government does and more. So it's we do have to be cognizant of what we're putting in our heads, and also what we're implying on what we're listening to. Like, all I said was I was picked up on a bus by a lady without permission of my parents, took into a facility, experiment run. I ruined an experiment. They got mad at me, and then I was took it back to school. You can imply a lot of stuff to it, but bare bones is what I said.
Hmm.
So but there is that connection also to the aliens. So I wanted to get those 2 points.
Yeah. 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 I know when you go into that like otherworldly research and stuff, it's is it interdimensional or extraterrestrial, or are those the
Right.
same thing, or is it a reflection of our subconscious, coming back at us, type of thing? There's so many answers, but the thing is that you know we're well, yeah, but we're left with these questions because we want to know what the fuck is going on. you know
Yeah.
when this weird shit happens to us, and so many people have spooky shit happen to them, and they have no explanation for it, and they just want answers. And of course, there is the rational answer of, well, it's just Venus, or swamp gas and shit like that, and that satisfies most people. But for some, it's not enough, or it doesn't click all the boxes of their particular experience. So I can see why some of us just shrug our shoulders and keep digging. But I guess we'll sort of wrap things up here, because when you and me get to talking, we hit so many topics and subjects, and we just go on and on and on for so much, and and it's just, you know we could go for hours. And as you see it on when I've appeared on your show, we pretty much have gone for hours. So we'll just
Yes.
go ahead and we'll wrap it up here, and then we'll pick it up again some other time. But thank you so much for coming on the show and letting me talk to you and sharing that experience with me. It's engrossing. It really is. And let the people know where they can find you.
No, I really appreciate it, Chris. It's always a good talk and a good discussion. You know so much about things that about what I'm talking about. You brought some really interesting points during this. The whole Buddhist philosophy of
Yeah.
reincarnation being possible. There's a lot of things, and this is why we all talk to each other. Why you just tell the truth, and don't worry about what people say about you, or if you just tell them what happened, and just hold true to that. You should be fine out there. But how you can find me? You can find me on YouTube at JBX is God. JBX is God. I would really appreciate you subscribing. I'm upping my game. We have a fully animated talk show. I'm animated and I get to talk to you, and we're about to release a new show called Black Cube, and this is the first time me even mentioning this. This is secret under. This is some real secret stuff. Okay, guys. So Black Cube, it's an immersive music show. We'll be making music from you in the chat live, and that'll be coming out probably within like a couple days, probably within a couple days from now. And what day is it? We're at the 10th, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
JBX is God. I appreciate your subscriptions, and any of anything you want to do, just hit me up. What my Twitter handle is at JBX Art, and then abbreviation of uh movement MVMNT. JVX Art MVMNT at whatever. So Twitter me.
All right. I'll have your links to the show notes, but definitely. And thank
All
you
right.
for coming on. This was a great show.
Yeah, it was. I really did enjoy it. Thank you.